How are you, man? Long
All
time.
good, bro. You tell me, how are you?
Good, 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 good. Anyway, let's kick things off. Anyway, thanks for making the time, man.
No, no, no. Thank you. Pleasure
So,
is mine.
so generally, when I do this, I take questions. I scratch my own itch, and then I mostly shoot my own questions that I feel like I should ask. But I generally go around and ask people what they would like to hear from the guest also. But for the listeners who might not know who you are and where you come from, would you mind giving a brief description about how you started and then how everything kicked off?
Whatever you feel is right, you ask, I'll answer.
Definitely. So let's start by, giving the viewers a brief
Yeah.
intro about you and then how did you, I know it, we've had extensive discussions about it. So for the viewers, how did it all start for you?
So, there are two things. One is sports has been a calling to me, meaning I cannot think of anything apart from sports. I cannot wear a pant shirt and go to office. So I had to do something with sports. That being said, I also found that the purpose of mine, meaning in life, what I feel is to help others. Like they say, seva. So I had to find something in which my purpose and my calling had to meet, and I found, meaning I felt strength and conditioning is the field where I could also help as far as I know, and I can be part of sporting environment. So that's how strength and conditioning came about. How it all started? Well, in grade 9, when I was 14 years old, I wanted to beat the fastest guy in the school. So he was
Mm,
coming from hills. So he clocked 11.4 in ninth. He used to beat the 12th graders when he was in grade 7, 6. So it was an aim to beat him. So I went to a guy who was NIS coach. So in India, you know what is NIS. Yeah. So he said, boss, is saal bhul ja. So this year, let it go. It cannot happen because he's too fast. So I said, okay, let's try. So in trying to beat him, we beat everyone in the school, but I couldn't beat him. So 1 year down the line, I trained, and that's how I understood training, and that's how I wanted to know more. So I didn't realize back then, but I was a guinea pig for that coach. He was trying out all the Charlie Francis or East German methods of training on me, and which worked. But I didn't know then that that was happening. So now when I
mm.
read and understand, I meaning yeah. So since then, I've been reading journals, doing stuff and all. But started back then and then slowly grew. I played cricket for 8 years, did track and field for 4 years, played football for 4 years. So it all culminated into this field being the apt field for me, as I said, where I could be in sports and also meaning help out people. So that's how it started.
If not an SMC, what would you have become?
Uh, if not an SNC, tough question, but I would be doing something in the field of meaning outdoor activity, maybe mountaineering or maybe something in sports, maybe army. You never know. Meaning something outdoor. Yeah,
But never formals.
never formals, never formals. That's
Good,
not
man.
who I
Good.
am. So yeah.
Yeah, yeah, makes sense, makes sense. So, in no random order, we'll just keep shooting questions. So, I spoke with Anand, I spoke to Sagar, and then this might be one question that, generally floats around a lot. In your opinion, what role do you give to specific exercises and translatory exercises? And that was something that I never discussed with Anand. It's there in the plan, but the conversation went on for an hour, and then I realized later that I never asked that question. So let me just put that first and foremost to you. Knowing what you know right now, how would you look at it, and how that you view these things right now?
So to get your question right, how would I put a particular exercises for cricketers, right? Like what
Specific
exercise?
exercises. So
Yeah.
let's keep all the general preparatory exercises
Yeah.
aside, and then purely
So
speaking about specific exercises. How do you look at it?
no, I don't think there is particular exercises for cricketer or for any sportsman per se. So it is all training. The movement is what I believe in, and I feel you train the athlete like an athlete, and then he goes on to play his sport. So when he goes on to play his sport, yes, there is a carryover. Okay, he's a fast bowler. He's a batsman is a wicket keeper, that 15-20% of specificity comes in, but around 70-80% is pure strength and conditioning and pure basics of strength and conditioning. You get a person strong, you get a person explosive, you get a person fast. So, and then his movement improves. So it is basically that. So first train the movement, then add strength to it, and then add speed to it, and then he's good to go. Yeah, meaning 15-20% is case to case. So if you have a history, if you have something going on with your body, with your sport, with your action, then you add or minus things based on the person. But specificity, out and out specificity based on sport, is, I don't think it works to a great extent.
Right. So, what do you do at this stage of your career when you're dealing with athletes who might be representing the country in under 19 or senior level, wherein if you hypothetically, let's say, you spot a lot of movement deficiency, like how you mentioned, would you still continue on with the general preparatory exercises, or if the athlete wants to see some specific exercise in the program, would you still just add it just for the sake of it?
So, Abhi, I believe in these three things, that though you have studied a lot of things, you have read a lot of things, and you know a lot of things, not everything applies to everyone. Even though theoretically you may feel that that applies to that person, it need not apply in that particular case at that particular time. So, for example, say a cricketer is 30 plus who has played for the country for 10 years. You know that he is not explosive so much that he should be at that level, but he is already past his prime when it comes to training athletically or developing athleticism in him. So he is already past that. All he wants to do is he wants to stay injury free. He wants to play around the year, and he wants to do his skill to 100%. He's okay to not do athletics, or he's okay to not be an athletic player, but he's okay to be a cricketer playing on the park for 1 year, doing his skills right. So you need to
Yeah.
understand context wise that, okay, the same thing will not apply for a 22-year-old. You will want to go out and make him athletic. You want to tap that training potential in him which is there, which is not been tapped yet. But the same thing will not apply to a 30-year-old. So when it comes to cricket, it is a skill sport. It is no rocket science. Everyone knows it. And the scope of influencing that sport by strength and conditioning interventions is, again, depends on where he's coming from, what is his base, what is his age, which segment of career he is in. So based on that, I feel is what you need to look into. Also, another tangent to this is Indians. So it might be completely different for a Kiwi guy or for an Australian, for an English fellow who has grown up playing sport or playing other sport on the weekends right from he was 5-6 years old. But Indians don't grow up that way. They are generally with their families watching movies, eating sweets, festivals, all that over weekends. And then suddenly they decide to become sportsmen when they are 14, 15 years of age. And you can't make them Usain Bolts, or you can't make them Eddie Hall suddenly after them starting to train at 16, 17. So you need to make that balance of where they are, how much they can take, what is their history, where they come from. So this is what I feel is the crux of, if you crack this code, I think you will do a good job in cricket in India.
So, knowing what you know about strength and conditioning, or fitness in general, what would you have done differently with yourself when you were playing?
So again, meaning people might feel that I am a weird guy in answering this, but I feel that there is a big void in understanding strength and conditioning in India. Cricket strength and conditioning is different to actual strength and conditioning, which is what we entered this field for. Even you are not a nobody. You know strength and conditioning, and I don't know if viewers know it or not, but you yourself are a very highly capable strength and conditioning guy. So you need to first answer this question before starting out, that whether you want to become a cricket SNC or an SNC. So once that is clear, the roadmap is clear for you, as in which way you want to go. So looking right now, when I see myself, I would have done more performance oriented training by myself. So I would love to train myself against goals which I would want to achieve. Like I trained, yes, I've been training for 8-9 years, that's all okay, but I would want to have started early, chasing that. Okay, I want to cut 0.2 seconds in my 100 meters, I want to lift 10 kgs more in my squats, I want to increase 5 kgs in my snatch. Those are the goals which needs a lot of scientific and proper training. You can't just go work out every day and achieve this. You need to train properly in a structured manner. So I would want have, I would love to have started early, like when I was 15, 16. That didn't happen, and I started when I was 20, 21, training in this fashion. That one, and also meaning I don't know whether it's possible for everyone, or I was fortunate enough to do track and field when I was in school. That retrospectively helped me understand a lot of things which I use nowadays. Other than that, I wouldn't have changed anything. So
Makes sense.
whatever mistakes, whatever has happened has helped me reach where I am. So I wouldn't have changed anything other than these two things.
Great, makes sense. So I would like to expand upon one point that you mentioned. You said you need to decide as a strength and conditioning coach whether you want to be a cricket SNC or an SNC. So, I mean, I get the context, you understand what you said, but the viewers might not get it completely. So, would you elaborate upon it a little bit more?
Yeah. So again, it is a contextual thing. So people might be listening to this in a foreign land and might be thinking this is not right. But when you come to India, it is a very different environment and a very different culture and a very unique community, you say, of strength and conditioning, where you can get off and be a successful cricket SNC, earn a lot of money, earn a lot of name, get famous, but you may not be a robust strength and conditioning coach because you have done everything in cricket for years and you might be great at cricket. But when you step out and maybe work in, say, football or track and field or endurance running or kabaddi or, say, martial arts or something, you need not be good at it because you have focused only on cricket. In cricket, the scope of influencing, as I said, the athletes is at best 40%, because they have grown up in a way they bat for 200, 300 balls a day since they are 13, 14. The only thing they do is bat or bowl, bat or bowl. They only get exposure to strength and conditioning when they are 19, 20. Okay, so from then you, as a strength and conditioning coach, know that they have already lost the prime years when you train their movement, when you train their awareness, when you train their lot of basic factors like, say, strength or speed or anything. Those are all gone. So then you
True.
are playing catch up from the word go. There are few guys who still eventually become what you want them to become, but not all. If you get 2-3 athletic fellows in a 15-member squad, you are lucky as an SNC guy to have those 2-3. Not everyone gets that. So what I mean by SNC, cricket SNC and SNC is that cricket SNC is a community where you need not be sound in strength and conditioning. Like, we read so many books, we do so many qualifications, we, I mean, follow so many coaches works. You need not do all that. You can just be you should know a little bit of rehab, in the sense that pain management and
True.
a lot of shoulder issues. You know that you should understand strength a little bit and management of workload. That's all, and you're good to go. You need not teach them powerlifting or Olympic weightlifting or out and out sprint training. It's not required like that. You can get away without doing all this. If you know it, it is an added advantage, yes. But meaning, if you don't know it, it is not that you will lose job or you will injure players. That's what I meant.
Yeah. It's a very interesting topic to probably discuss for hours and hours together because
Yeah.
you and I have learned it from experience. Straight out of the books, we wanted to influence everything that's possible with an athlete. And later experience taught us that that's not the case.
That's
So
not.
how do you personally deal with the fact that you probably may not be a great influencer in the athletic development of a player? Is it something that still bothers you?
So This takes me back to the first thing I said. My purpose of entering this field is to be involved in sport and at the end to help the person involved. So every day, the question is, I am here to help someone. I'm not here to fulfill my agendas or show what I know or practice what I have learned. So that is the guiding light, or say that is the what do you call, the meaning the point which guides the practice what we do as an SNC. So the core principle is help the athlete, what he
Right.
needs, what he can take, what whether it will be helped, what is the risk to reward ratio when it comes to what you are applying. That should be the guiding light, I feel. Other thing is that yes, sometimes the athlete won't understand, the athlete won't accept, but you know there is a scope of helping him. So then you will have to be patient and trust that whatever you have explained or whatever you have told him, someday he understands and he, meaning, accepts the fact that he can improve. It need not be from you,
Mm.
but you have actually influenced him and actually helped him understand that there is scope, and then wherever he goes and takes that help, you should be happy. It need not be he should come to me only and train. No, no, no. So I feel there are many ways to influence someone, just by showing light, or sometimes by not doing something, you are being a great help to that person. By not
Absolutely.
applying what you know is sometimes big help to an athlete in his life as a
True, true.
player. So I think that's the answer. There is no one answer basically, but yeah, yeah.
Yeah. I understand. Along the similar lines, uh, so when, let's say, the athlete is sitting with you, you have a coach, you have a physio, you have an SMC, you have a nutritionist, you have a physiologist. None of them wakes up in the morning, saying that let me do a bad job today. Let me go and hurt Soham or let me go hurt Abhinav.
Yeah.
So they are trying to put things across in favor of the athlete. So when I sit down for a meeting, when there is something that comes my way that I may not completely agree with, I need to understand that he is trying to talk in favor of the athlete. Doesn't matter whether it's right or wrong or I agree or not. The athlete is the focal point, and then we all need to probably just work keeping that in mind. And it is not a motive; it is not about the athlete. And I think it's something that you don't get to read in NSCA books.
Yeah.
So yeah, moving away from the conventional theoretical aspects, the agile type of periodization that you probably are doing right now, and not very structured, that Russian and Soviet philosophies. What is your take on that? Like you can call it however you want, daily undulating periodization or agile periodization, for a cricketer especially, where the density of the matches are so high.
So for cricket, it is always undulated. It is always undulated. Whoever says they can go the conventional Tudor Bompa way in cricket, uh, I don't know how that will work out. Because the very simple thing is, you don't know what the batsman or the bowler is going to go through today. He can get out on zero, he can score 100, he can bowl 30 overs, or he can bowl only 10 overs. You never know
Mm,
what is the guy going to come out with after entering the field. So you cannot say, okay, today you will do max strength, tomorrow you will do tempos, day after you will do acceleration. It cannot happen that way. It has to
right,
be
right.
what is coming up, what you have done, where are we heading. Yes, there is an underlying plan to him, taking into account what he knows, what is good for him, where is weak, what are we working towards. But it has to be by the year and by the day. So what you hear
Mm,
from him, what the feedback is giving, and every day you should ask the question, okay, how is he today? How is he waking up? What signs is he giving? His, meaning, the way he shakes your hand, the way he says good morning, everything says something about the state the athlete is in. So
mm,
you should be very keen, very involved, and very, very watchful, very observant. And so it's
right, right,
basically undulated. That's all.
right.
Yeah.
Out of the context, just suddenly popped in my brain. Just want to ask you a technical question. This was something that was, in my mind for a very long time. Is there any specific method by which you track the load of a batsman? For bowlers, we have, a couple of methods. Because my case study for UKSCA was for a batsman, and I went there and then I presented the case study. And unfortunately, the guy was a cricket SNC, and he happened to ask me, "How do you track the load of a batsman?" And I was clean bowled there, but somehow I could, just get my way around it and then clear it. So, is there any specific method that's very relevant to the literature that's coming out of cricket right now, other than the RPE versus load
Yeah.
method?
See, for cricket batsmen, there is no. I don't think there is any literature available apart from that running between or accelerations or fielding, all that. How many balls he faced? What is good number? What is bad number? It is it is very subjective. Uh,
Right.
uh, a test specialist who is right now in the Indian team has grown up playing batting for 3 hours in nets. So for him, the threshold of facing the balls until he fatigues or until his workload is too high is different to a guy who is batting only for say for 40 minutes every day. So how do you generalize and objectify these things? So I don't think there is any particular way to set, meaning again a number that okay, this is the way to monitor the workload of a batsman because of the
Right.
nature. And because the Hardik Pandya, for example, he only hits sixes. So a net session of 15 minutes for him is like doing snatches for 15 minutes. And
Absolutely.
it is a high threshold, 15 minutes. That is way higher than a person batting for 2 hours, just
True.
defending, leaving the ball. You understand
Mm.
what I'm saying? So it is
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
subjective. So I don't know, meaning personally, I don't know you can put a number on that or not. But again, as I said, a guy, you meet him every day, you see him round the year, you know how he's moving, how he's reacting. Some This is again from experience, and one of my mentors, you know him, Mr. Shankar Basu, he told me
Yeah.
this, that sometimes batsmen start to see the ball late, in the sense that
Mm.
sometimes they pick the length very early when they are sharp, when they're feeling great, when they're fit and all that. Once you play 8 months, you're traveling, you're playing cricket year in and day out. They start to see the ball late. They get hit. They miss the ball. They start to miss easy catches. Those are also signs of neural fatigue. Those are also signs of fatigue setting in. So those are the
Mm-hmm.
things also you need to. You cannot just neglect them. You need to keep in mind why it is happening. Okay, no one is perfect, and you will get hit. You will miss balls. You will drop catches. All that is fine. On a consistent basis, when that starts to happen, you need to ask the question: what is happening in his training? Whether he's recovering well, whether he's eating well, whether we are going overboard. So again,
Yeah.
I don't know there is a number or a formula for that, but I think observation and being involved and understanding how each person is moving is important. So
That makes a lot of sense. Unless you get a fair idea about what is the global load that they're going through, there
yeah,
is no way you can make action points based on your ACW or ratios. I mean, you can track it just for the sake of
yeah,
filling up your Excel sheet, but I don't think any sport for that one,
yeah,
not just cricket.
yeah.
Yeah,
So at least see, at least in football, 90 minutes is a set time they are going to play.
yeah.
Okay, and you have a deviation to the average number of average workload, that okay, they can go up so much or down so much. But in cricket, as I said, you don't know whether that 30 runs he scored is in 6 balls or in 60 balls.
Mm.
So you cannot say, meaning as I said, it has to be on the case per day for that player, how it happened, why it happened. So it has to be that way.
It might be an interesting topic for your PhD.
Now I am not a PhD guy.
Right.
Yeah, but you never say never. Let's see. But right now, PhD, masters itself is, oh, it's like that. So
Yeah, yeah. So, do you keep a lookout for the, Indian SNC community, like just like a bird's eye view? Just do you observe what's happening in and around?
I faced this thing when I started off. I messaged, emailed, I reached out to many SNCs when I started off. None of them replied.
Hmm. Way
One
back
guy,
when you started.
way back before I did my CSCS, that what is
Hmm.
CSCS? I want to do CSCS. I don't know what is the scope of work after doing CSCS. None of them replied, and many are there right now in cricket. They're doing there. So no one replied. One guy replied, Mr.
Mm-hmm.
Basu, and he is my mentor. So
Yeah.
apart from him, no one replied. So I make sure that whoever messages me, whether it's Instagram, whether it's email, whether it's text message for help or guidance in SNC, I do my best to support and help them. I
Hmm.
go out of the way to. I am not a expert and I am not the best SNC in the country or whatever. I give them what I have learned, what has helped me, and then it is up to them to take it or leave it or research on it and do it. So I always say, this is my take, this is my advice for you. You do your research and see if it helps you. So I make it a point to help everyone, each and everyone who reaches out to me in with whatever mode it is. Other thing is, if there is a guy who is showing potential, who is not having enough resources or who is not having enough opportunities, wherever I can help, I put his name forward. Then it is up to him to crack the interview or impress the people through his work or whatever.
Yeah.
So that is the way I keep in touch with, or I keep a bird's eye view, as you said, of community in India. And so that's what it is.
Yeah. So do you think that is there something that merits change as of now? Because the whole reason why I started this networking deal was to just connect. Because I am in a remote area in Karnataka, you are in Bangalore, someone else is in Mumbai. Like there is no link whatsoever. The last time I think I spoke to you on a message was in 2017.
Yeah.
It's almost 3+ years now. So there's no connection and communication whatsoever. So I just thought enough is enough. Let's just reach out to people. Whether you like me, you don't like me, I don't care. Let's just talk it out.
Yeah.
So that was the whole reason of this
No,
initiative.
but meaning it's something you won't know what you're doing right now. Maybe 3-4 years down the line, people will take inspiration from what some guy has said some moment, and that will be a turning point in their lives. So they are going to thank you for this. Not now, 3-4 years down the line, they are going to come back to you and say, "Boss, thanks for that interview. That guy, he did this, and then it
Yeah,
helped."
yeah,
So it
yeah.
wouldn't have been possible without you. So yeah.
Sincerely hope so. So is there something that you think that merits change in the current landscape of the Indian SMC community?
I just want and I just hope. I don't know whether this can happen or not, but I just hope people in India, especially, they want to find the easy way out with
Yeah.
anything. So if say I have nothing against ACA, don't get me wrong, it is a very good course, very informative course. But the first thing they do is ACA, and then they stop.
Hmm.
Why ASC has no exam? Okay, you just attend a workshop, you fill a workbook, and it is done. Now I don't know whether ASCA guys know it or not, but in India, workbook can be filled by anyone. I have been approached by people to pay me and fill their ASCA books, workbooks. So all I want SNC community in India, or all I want my fellow guys to do, is challenge yourself, do a course which tests. I'm not saying CSCS is great, no, but do something which is pass or fail. There is no
Yeah.
middle path. Either you know it
Hmm.
or you don't know it. I feel UKSCA is the most, meaning, robust and all-round course there is in strength and conditioning, because one, you have to spend money and go there. That is
Absolutely.
for starters for
A lot
us.
of money.
Yeah. And the other thing is, it is, you need to write science, meaning answer science questions. You need to talk. You need to present. You need to lift. You need to coach. Everything is assessed. So
Hmm.
right now, till something else comes up, I think UKSCA is the benchmark for courses. Then you write CSCS, it's a challenging pass-fail affair. Then ASCA, yes, it is very informative, and do the right, meaning do it the right way, fill your own workbook. It's a very good course. Of course, meaning, so I have this formula. I don't know, meaning, whether it's the right time to say this or not, but give yourself 10 years, do academically, do masters, do UKSCA, do CSCS, do ASCA 2 or 3. This is your academics. Do 3 years of team sport, do 2 years of personal training, do 2 years of training the kids.
Hmm.
Okay, and yourself, right through 8 years, continue to train against performance goals. You do
Absolutely.
this, you do this for 10 years. Don't see who is bad, who is good, don't judge people, don't say I want that job. You do this for 10 years and you will be somewhere, if you've done all
Hmm.
these things. Now people ask me where to start. Boss, you start somewhere, get all these things ticked at the end of 10 years. Simple. And you,
Hmm.
because kids, you cannot talk science to them, you have to make it simple, explain in a simple way and coach them. Personal training helps you do pain management and rehab exercises and all that, fat loss, body composition work, all that. But for team sport, not everyone is same. Periodization, workload management, traveling with the team, off season comes in, all those things. And academics is academics. If you're 20, start with training yourself and build. If you are academic guy, start with practicals and work towards academics. If you are a practical guy, start from academics, work towards practicals, but get these things done is what I feel is the right blend. And then you will be an expert and we will be listening to you who has done this. So
Absolutely.
I am in pursuit to achieve this. Let's see where I end up. But yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Tying this, what you right now said to the point that you made about 4 minutes back, someone listening to this podcast might pick up something from someone and might go, ah, that was well said. This might be one what you right now said, that 10-year plan is exactly what I think people should do.
Meaning this is again, I've spoken again, I've learned from you also, I've learned from Sagar, us fellow guys talking, seeing. So everyone's journey, I picked up something and I felt that no, in 10 years this should be done in any order, but get it done.
True.
And then you will know things about strength and conditioning wherever you go in the world. When you talk, people will listen to you and you will get that respect, because doing these things is not easy. And it no
Yeah.
not anyone can do it, that okay chalo I'll do it. And no, it will take a lot of sweat, tears and blood. So
Absolutely, absolutely. I think all of it should happen at the right time. Like someone might have the money to go UKSA right after they start their career, but may not have a clue about what
no
they're
no
doing.
yeah,
It took me about 8 years to even gather my confidence to go there and then present myself with the SSS.
yeah,
So, so the money part wasn't a
yeah.
problem. The expertise was a problem. The confidence was a problem. So for all of it to merge and dial yourself in, it takes time.
Yeah. No, and the other thing is, I've spoken to a lot of foreign SNCs. So we Indians, we doubt ourselves a lot because we don't come from English-speaking nation. We don't have structured undergrad degrees. It need not be. It is not required. You can talk in broken English, be humble, be polite, talk to the point, talk nice sense. They'll listen to you and you will get your respect. You need not use big words and all. No, keep it simple, but know what you're talking from sound, science, and experience, and you will get your respect. The other thing is, people say, "Oh, you didn't do masters, you didn't do BS." But first, you come to India, you have almost zero universities which give you bachelors in strength and conditioning.
Yeah,
One
true.
zero. Okay, in your country, you have 100 universities which gives you bachelors. So for an Indian to do masters or bachelors itself is an achievement first. Okay.
Absolutely.
Other thing is, for you to do a masters in Edith Cohen, the best university right now, 28 lakhs is what you need. Indian rupees. How can a person pay 28 lakhs for a strength and conditioning masters? If you are an Indian, you know what I'm talking.
Yeah, yeah.
So don't judge. They will judge us by, okay, you're not studied, you're not this. So that's where this 10 years comes in. Give yourself 10 years and you will be toe to toe with them.
Yeah.
Don't they see their starting point is 40 meters in a 100-meter race. Our starting point is 0 meters. So
Yeah,
you
well
have to
said.
see who finishes the race at the 100-meter mark. Don't try to compete with them at the starting point. Try to go to 100-meter mark and then see who reaches first. Is what I would say, and how I look at strength and conditioning community in India is. So we are starting off behind, but there is enough in us, and there is, I would say, lot of intelligence and lot of potential in us to beat them at the 100-meter mark or compete with them. Forget about beating. There is no beating. There is no good, bad, and all. But you can give them a competition. So that is what I feel. Yeah.
Absolutely makes sense. Just like how we have in sport the concept of early specialization or diversification, it truly applies to our careers also. So, how that you look at it? Like, what are the merits and demerits of early specialization within a sport or within a specific target audience?
Um, I would give it a context that if you need money, you need to earn. You need your family to be meaning secure. You need a job. So it is okay. Cricket is the highest paying. what do you call, field or sport in the country for SNCs. It's fine to get into cricket, work 3-4 years, make your name, make your money. That's fine, but don't restrict yourself in the learning front. Is what I would say. Train as many people as you can. Train your sisters, train your sisters' friends, your brothers' friends. Okay, there is a lot of learning to do there. I see. I after doing 2 years of first class cricket, I left that because I wanted to. I could have easily stayed there. I was getting 80,000 a month at 24, 25. That is all you need. It was easy cruising, comfort zone life. But I wanted to know what is the other side. What is personal training like? What is it to work with a 40-year-old crorepati who has earned everything but his back is broken?
Yeah.
Okay, they are crying for take all the money you need, but fix my back. Okay, so again, so that's when you cannot talk strength and conditioning. You cannot give them squat. You cannot make them do sprints. You cannot give them snatches. It is basic, boss. Do goblet squat, fix the pattern, do glute activation, basic things. For that, you need to know your anatomy. You need to know how much dose is enough. So that 2 years I learned about that. Then I said, okay, I understood this, got this. I need to get back to sports. So everything I feel is important. So as I said, train as many people. Starting of the career, 3-4 years, 5 years. Don't look at whom you are training. You won't get an Usain Bolt to train. To train whoever you can, make your reference points, and go from there. Meaning, yeah.
So you, as you said, your purpose of life is to help people be in the sporting front, either on field or court or wherever it is. Generally, when people are wired like that, they don't have an academic inclination. And unfortunately or fortunately, we are loaded with, data management, all the difficult topics that we might have completely let go of during our studying ages. So how is that you deal with it to just balance the academic things? Like, what's your learning process like?
See, I have always been a guy who trained, like sprinted.
Sorry to know, were you a mid ranker, top ranker in school?
Sorry, I
Were you
was
a mid
I
ranker?
I got a 84 percentage in 12th CBSE boards.
Ah, that's a top ranker, man.
No. Top ranker was 96.7 percentage.
No, in our context.
Yeah. So no, again, that out of 12 months, 8 months I was playing cricket.
Oh,
So that was my motivation. That okay, my school is allowing me so much time to do what I love. I need to pay back some way. So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
where the motivation to study came. This motivation was not to get great grades. Also, my parents
Yeah,
paid a lot of money for me to study in that school. So I had to
right.
do something for them. Anyways, so I cannot. My parents cannot believe I am doing masters with my own money, paying my own fees, and deciding on my own. They are like, "Boss, are you okay?" So, so I understand your question. The only thing is that data, you can say from the way I've answered the question that I'm not a data or I'm not academic guy. Okay. Having said that, data cannot directly influence coaching or performance per se. It is an indirect, short and indirect influence which cannot be neglected. What a GPS, what a force plate, what a push band, or what a my jump 2 app, or whatever the bar velocities or whatever we measure can do cannot be neglected. But to make it the forefront, to make it the showstopper of strength and conditioning, I am not too meaning sure about that. That unless there is a human brain from experience, from science, filtering all the data, what you've gathered, and then applying to the athlete, I don't think data has a direct influence on strength and conditioning. There has to be a sound human brain who has got the experience, who has got the knowledge, who has got the instinct and the intuition of training, coaching, filtering that data, and then applying to the athlete is what I feel.
Absolutely, absolutely. So now that there is a need for studying, there is no withdrawal from research to put our efforts in.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
So what I'm saying is, see, now deliberate learning is something and random reading is something.
Yeah.
Now that you have a purpose for masters or the field of cricket that you're as a part of right now, there is a motivation that comes from that field that you represent, rather
Yeah.
than just studying random stuff that we're taught in school,
Yeah,
which we didn't.
definitely. There is there is always that why I'm doing that. The purpose is there, and then I'm doing masters. So
Yeah,
that's
beautiful,
what it is.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is next for you? So people might assume, the viewers, people who are starting
Oh,
off this field, that you've reached at NCA. So what is next for you?
my answer to that is my tenure are not over. So I am still finishing my 10 years yet. Maybe next year it will get over. Abhi, you know me. I don't plan for my future.
I
So
know.
my answer is still the same. That I don't actually plan my life. I believe in flow, and I don't interfere with that flow. NCA happened by chance. I never ever thought that I would get into NCA. I was planning, you know it. We were there together. I was planning to start something of my own back in Ahmedabad or Surat, and
Yeah,
then
I remember.
suddenly this came up. So it is not a plan. I have never planned anything. The decision to leave first class cricket was taken in 3 days. That boss, I'm getting too comfortable with this. I need to take that. So maybe whenever that feeling, that instinct, that gut feel comes, that NCA has given what it has to, and I have given to NCA what I can, and it is time for next chapter. It is time for next chapter. So that's how I lead my life. So I meaning it's all instinctive. But again,
Right.
yeah, that instinct comes from lot of contemplation, lot of introspection, lot of experiences and all. But I don't force anything. Like it's not, oh, I want to go to Indian team, this is the way. No. If it has to happen, it will happen. If it is not going to happen, it is not going to happen. So
I'll take one last question that came from one of my colleagues from my circle. How does a typical day look like at NCA?
So the thing is, okay, I'll just tell you what my day looks like. Depending on the player, the day starts at 7:30 a.m. If the first session, sometimes say a player, the Indian team guys cannot, as you know, that they travel so much, they cannot train like how they can train in a training block on the tour. So what happens is every now and then few players come here for a training block. So when that block is there, the first session, there are two sessions in a day. First session starts at around 7:30, gets done by 9, then they go back and then they come at 3:30 or 4 in the evening. So basically, if there are training blocks, the day starts at 7:30, and then around 4 or 5 players come during the day, say 7:31, 9 o'clock, 11 o'clock. That is first half. Then there is evening sessions of 3:30, 4:30, 4, whatever. If there are no players in the training blocks, then it depends on the physiotherapy department, because they are treating the players, for the players who are with the rehab, and based on their plan we need to fix our slots. So in that case, I the start the day at 6. So I come and train, do my own training first. So by 7:38 I am done. So that if I need to adjust to their timing, I am available during the day to adjust to their timing. So basically, it is, you can say, from 6 to 1 we do either our training or train the players. From 1 to 3 is downtime, lunch, and have chats with people around. Again, from 3 o'clock we pick up and do the evening sessions, and the day ends by say 5, 5:36, like that. But there is no set timing. It is based on the players. That's how it is run, Monday to Saturday. Saturday is not a working day, but players are there, so it is a working day. Festivals, players are there, it is a working day. Simple. It is
Yeah.
basically depending on the player's training plan. If it is
Schedule. Yeah.
required to be here on Sunday, we are here on Sunday. Because some players, based on the tour dates, they leave on Monday. So the last session needs to happen on Sunday. So then it is
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
It is like any other academies or high performance center where players' training plan dictates the timings of us. So yeah.
Right. Are you still a coffee addict?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Which SNC? I don't know which SNC. Which SNC is not a coffee addict?
Coffee addict.
I doubt it. So,
But you're not a black coffee person. You drink milk
so
coffee, right?
I what happened is after leaving Chennai, coming here, the filter coffee was not filter coffee as it was.
Yeah.
So I had to buy an espresso at my home, and now I am espresso person.
Oh,
So
great,
I
great.
am on your team now.
Great,
Yeah,
buddy. Great. Anyway, thank you so much for making the time for this, Soham. Next time, whenever we meet, I mean, you're not a beer person. I'll drink a beer and you can drink a coffee.
100%, 100%. Thanks, Abhi. So you had the world to choose from, and you gave me the opportunity to speak to you. So thank you. And for me, I don't get invites. You are the only person who invited me. So for me, it was just easy option to say yes. So thank you for having me and giving me the opportunity to share whatever I know or whatever I've experienced. Thank
Absolutely.
you.
It's a pleasure, man. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure. I'm sure you will be one of the regulars of this show. I might bother you in the future as well.
Anytime for you, Abhi. Anytime.
Great. Thank you so much, mate.